This segment is actually part two of my conversation with James Green for This Week in Business Continuity. We spoke so much and had so much to say, we couldn't fit it into one episode. So this is part two. Check out the links that appear at the end of this video, and it'll take you to part one, so you won't miss anything. Welcome back, This Week in Business Continuity with James Green. James, with lots of talk there we had to say in the first segment, let's put it that way. One of the big things in the headlines now, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and that's the Olympics. Considering Japan or Tokyo specifically is a bit of a hotspot at the moment, what are your thoughts on even holding the Olympics? Do you think they should have been held, changed in some way, delayed again, canceled?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, you're gonna get me talking out of both sides of my mouth. So in the last segment, I told you how I went to a in-person risk management conference, which is definitely not essential. And now I'm going to say the Olympics should not have been held. I find it confusing. In Tokyo, you're in a third lockdown, second and a half lockdown. You're asking people to stay at home. They've decided, that the International Olympic Committee has decided that it's such a risk, we're going to have zero fans, which, by the way, I think I read that, Japan lost close to $1 billion in revenue just from ticket sales for that. That's not even counting the ancillary flights, hotels, vendors, restaurants, all the money that's spent. And then I was thinking the other day, watching one of the ceremonies, that the IOC said, hey, COVID is so dangerous that you have to, if you win a medal, you have to put it on yourself. We can't even put it around your neck. So we told people in Tokyo to stay indoors. We told all the fans to go away. We told the winning athletes they have to put the medal on themselves. But then at the same time, we're telling 14,000 people from all over the world to come and congregate in Tokyo for a sporting event. And I don't want to minimize the Olympics. I love the Olympics. I went to the Olympics in Atlanta, one of the highlights of my life. I know people train their entire lives to compete in the Olympics, and just kicking it 4 years down the road means people can't compete. They miss their windows. I'm very respectful of the sacrifices people make to even get there, but I can't help but feel we're going to look back at this event in a few months very similarly to the way we looked at Mardi Gras in New Orleans last year and spring break in Florida last year as these super spreader events that people regretted. So yeah, even though I was at an in-person conference and I love the Olympics, I'm saying we shouldn't have had the Olympics, because I don't know how you manage and social distance and keep 14,000, 15,000 people safe
in a relatively tight area, because all the athletes, coaches, support staff from all around the world live in the same vicinity. And there have already been instances right from day one of coaches or players having COVID, and those that are around them all of a sudden have to isolate. And for some, maybe their event is days down the road, so it doesn't impact them. But maybe for others who now have to isolate, and to your point, they've now missed their chance. They can no longer participate and get that gold medal that they've been maybe all their life striving for. And I don't understand why they would still allow that to go forward, to your point, to bring all these people in around the world. Now it's going to be a super spreader, but we're not talking in your examples, in Florida, of Miami Beach, people going for the most part across the US, for the most part. Because Canada, nobody in Canada could go down. So, in the US. But now we've got a situation where they're literally going to almost every country in the world.
Exactly.
Through airports where they're coming, and not every single flight is going to be a direct flight. So they're going to come in contact with other people on their way home. And now what? There is the potential for that super spreader event from Tokyo, the Olympics, going to other places that wouldn't hopefully be impacted on this level. Let's say I went to the Olympics and I caught COVID or had asymptomatic or whatever, coming back to Canada, but I'm stopping in Hong Kong on the way, or I'm going down to visit, coming through Hawaii or coming through some other place. When I get to that airport, I'm spreading that around in wherever it is I've landed now in that airport. And now those people are taking it off, sent to other places in the world before I ever get home. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there wasn't discussion. So last year in the US and Canada in professional basketball and professional hockey, they had the playoffs in a bubble, right? So all the players were in this area. They could not leave. They had to quarantine for 2 weeks before they could get in. And then they were supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks before they got out, but that kind of fell apart. And I understand that 15,000 people is a lot different than 200 and a lot of different sporting events, but I'm surprised there wasn't even discussion about, can we create a track and field bubble and a swimming bubble and a gymnastics bubble. And, in order to compete, you have to give up 2 weeks on the front and back end.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, I'm not going to give up 4 weeks of my time to speak at a small conference. But if I'm an Olympic level athlete, I would certainly, you've invested years of your life to get to that point, a few more weeks to protect the people of Tokyo, to protect the globe. I don't even know if that's feasible, but I'm surprised that it wasn't even discussed at all.
Yeah, it was. For the longest time, it was, are we going to hold them, or we're not going to hold them, or we're going to hold them, or we're not going to hold them. Okay, we'll hold them and just no spectators. There we go.
Yeah.
And it just, well, what kind of discussions did you have?
Well, I think the driver was, if they don't hold them, the IOC has to give their television money back. They didn't care about fans because the revenue from fans goes to the host nation committee. But
and the local businesses,
the IOC gets the TV money, and no event, you have to give that money back. And I think, honestly, that was the biggest driver of what do we have to do to not give that money back. And I think I'm worried, look at what's happening, like you said, with the Delta variant, with things going on. I'm wondering if we're going to look back and regret not taking some more precautions or even discussing any precautions.
Yeah, we got, 6 more days for the Olympics, I think. 6 more days to go, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I guess we'll know in about a week afterwards when the majority of all the athletes start heading home and all the coaches, and they start spreading out, and we'll see what happens then. Hopefully, we're all wrong, but history has proven with Miami Beach and Thanksgiving Day here in Canada that certain things that don't look like they could be a problem suddenly become real big problems afterwards. Within 2 to 3 weeks, all of a sudden you've gone from 0 to 60. Like, oh geez.
Exactly. And congratulations, I was up at 4 a.m. yesterday to watch the Canadian women's soccer team knock out the US women's soccer team. Fantastic match, which wish it wasn't at 4 o'clock, so maybe that's on my part to watch it, but great match.
Yeah, congratulations to everybody. To be honest, I didn't think we were going to win that, because I know the US is a really strong team and has some of the best players in the world. So to win that was, to be honest, a shock.
It was a great
but a very pleasant one, I have to admit. So, but still, it's on the Olympic level, so every single person, it doesn't matter you're on the winning or losing side, you're one of the best in the world. So congratulations to everybody in that. And I just wanted to say that you mentioned the sacrifice Olympians. When I was in high school, one of my best friends, Todd, was a ski jumper. Those crazy guys that go down the big hills, and yikes. But he was a ski jumper, and he was in the Calgary Olympics. So he missed out on a lot of things, but he did a lot of training, and I understand the sacrifice. And I'm sure if that was a COVID period, how he would have felt not having been able to go to Calgary if it was
Exactly.
canceled after all those years and the sacrifices he made to get there. So, I certainly understand that. And then to put that on a global level, like the Summer Olympics, which are bigger than the winter, it's that in itself, I think, would probably cause some additional mental health issues.
Yeah.
All these years to get to not, and that wouldn't be interesting, with all these athletes around the world, all of a sudden feeling that way if things were canceled.
Exactly. That's why I wish there would have just been some more discussions about, okay, what are some other ideas instead of, like you said, oh, we're just going to postpone it a year. Yes, no, black, white. I think there could have been some more thoughtful discussions about ways to minimize impact.
Yeah, I like your example of leveraging what the NBA and the National Hockey League did with these bubbles. I think that would have actually been an interesting idea for the Olympics to have at least considered. So. However, we'll find out in a few weeks if they were right, or if we're right.
Exactly.
Well, let's move on to our next one. We're going to talk about NIST, who are, looking at artificial intelligence and risk management. And one of the questions you posed is, should we be considering AI for business continuity or in business continuity? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the last episode, you and I had a very long discussion about the pros and cons of standards. And I think we both see the good and bad in standards. But one of the things, and I said it then, and I'll say it again, what I always watch for is what types of standards are being discussed, are being considered, what has reached the point where a regulatory body says, hey, we should take a look at this. So I was completely stunned, to be honest, that NIST was already looking at and having open discussion, I think in 2 weeks, on developing a risk management framework for artificial intelligence. I didn't even feel that we were at that point yet.
Yeah, me too.
My question to you was, if NIST is already thinking about AI risk management standards, do we need to be thinking about AI in business continuity? And what does that even mean? Like, do you have a definition of what would be Alex's future state of AI in BC? If you were 50 years out or you were in a sci-fi movie, what would that even look like?
Well, AI, I think there can be benefits for AI and business continuity. For artificial intelligence, it needs test data to make predictions and help. It needs actual data of things that are really occurring, and like the lessons learned data, all the findings from things. However, because not everybody captures lessons learned and findings, not everybody wants to admit their failings. How effective is AI going to be if that information doesn't go into AI? If it goes into AI, would an organization that didn't have the best recovery, shall we say, want their information included in their AI? And would it just be their own findings anyway within their own application, which would benefit them, could benefit them, but wouldn't benefit anybody else? And if you're a vendor with AI, you're going to want that information to make your product the best it can be, which is fantastic when you're following a linear disaster. When this happens, do this, this, this. Choose this, then you go here, here, here. Choose that, go there, here, here, here. However, sometimes you can have a plan or strategy, AI telling you to do all these fantastic things, but the thing it can't help you with is the human aspect. The public may still turn around and turn on you. It doesn't matter what your AI is saying, that you have to do these 10 things in this order and this time frame. the public is saying we want something else. So what good is that AI now? You've invested in it, and it's come to nothing because the public on social media is saying that James Green Incorporated didn't do A, B, and C. Even though you're following your plan, it's working and everything is going fine. So, and sometimes, unfortunately, there becomes a big reliance on technology to provide those answers. That there are some vendors who, I have a product that can make your recovery process seamless. Well, no offense, but BS. Because there are just way too many unknowns, when a situation occurs. So it can't do that. Nobody can say that, and I think if we have AI and BCM, because we've for 20, 30 years, we always had struggled with the buy-in aspect from executives. Executives can say, oh, we have an application now that can do this. Oh, great. Let's just leverage the application. There's my buy-in. Here's the check. Go buy it. And, we don't need that department anymore, or most of those people in the department anymore. You still do. So it would be interesting to see how AI can be leveraged properly. And you mentioned earlier about sharing best practices. Organizations will have to ante up and share their experiences to make that AI effective and do what you want it to do. At the same time, knowing that it's only going to give you half the picture. You have to take into the human elements and all the people that are making decisions or executing plans, or whatever the case may be, all have their own biases and their own personalities, their own preferences that AI can't predict and determine. So I think AI can help in some respects with all the building and the documenting and all making those kind of decisions. But I think right now it's going to struggle with any kind of an implementation aspect.
Yeah, I'm excited about, like you said, automation for those linear instances or for those low level decisions, right? So a few years ago, I managed a program and we connected this, that, and the other. So if one of our sites was in an area that got a tornado warning, for example, all the employees automatically got a text. So the lag time was like 2 seconds. That kind of automation, you want people to shelter in place if there's a tornado 100 times out of 100. That kind of automation, that kind of AI or machine learning is exciting. But to your point, if there's an over reliance on automation, what happens? So we often see you run a fire drill and people go to the exit of habit. So you and I have to badge in the front door every day for 5 years, and there's a fire drill and no one uses the door right here. They all go to the front door. If you have an automated system, how is the system noticing that, oh, there's 150 people going towards the front door and no one towards the back door? So that'll be interesting. And then to your point, the way that our programs get better is by those after action reviews. Hey, what did we do right? Let's pat ourselves on the back. What did we do wrong? Because that's what really makes us more resilient. That's what makes our program stronger. And as you said, those are almost always political. A lot of times as a consultant, I get brought in to do AIRs just because the practitioner says to me, hey, I can't ask that question of my boss. That's a bad career move for me, but you can come in and say, why did you do X? And let them hate on me. And you get that information and that honesty. But without that, how's that machine learning, your decision tree? It's not going to be more effective going forward. So I'll be really curious. This standard, I've been waiting to see. They're going to have a kickoff webinar. I'm just intrigued. How do you even develop a risk management framework for AI at this point in time? So interesting to see what happens there, and then intrigued how early it's already being discussed at the NIST at that formal level.
I'd be interested in knowing what the trigger was to even get to that point. If we are still so young in the early stages of AI, or at least the AI now people are really starting to perceive. We're so young. Is it fear that's creating that need for a standard to have regarding artificial intelligence? Or, is it because we've watched too many Hollywood movies, that artificial intelligence, oh, that means people are going to lose their jobs. That means, missile silos are going to open up and the end of the world. We got to have a standard and a framework around this. When we're not even there, we don't have that capability at all. So it's interesting to understand. So what's the trigger? Why do we need to go down this route now? Especially with an organization like NIST, which for anyone around the world, if I hope I remember right, National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yes,
I think it is. Yeah. Why are they even thinking like this?
And that's why I'm intrigued. I think there are concerns, and there has been studies, for example, around facial recognition software. That facial recognition software tends to be most effective when the people being scanned are similar to the people who created the software itself. So you have a lot of false positives when it's a different race, different ethnic group, different background. So I around the law enforcement and legal, I totally understand, hey, let's make sure there are some standards so we're not falsely accusing or identifying people because of a glitch in the matrix. But to your point, to have NIST do this, I'm really curious where this is going, because I would not think that NIST would be, and I'm not saying NIST isn't cutting edge. I don't want anyone to think I'm negging on NIST. An AI framework for risk management is not something I would expect them to be working on at this time. So I'm really curious, when it opens up, what exactly do they have in mind for this? And to your point, who was the driver? Who was pushing this to say, hey, we need this now?
Was there an event that happened that's driving this? Maybe it's one of the driverless cars. Maybe one of those incidents that have caused this, but still it would be good to know, okay, let's put some frameworks around this, because this is what could happen. I just wouldn't want it to be something that's fear-based, or our favorite thing, somebody's got it on a tick box, some audit report. Oh, what's the framework you're using for this? Oh, great, here we go again. So
one's got a deliverable due by 12/31. So let's check that box.
Well, let's see, what's time? Oh, we've actually run out of time. We're overtime.
We are overtime again.
We're overtime again, and we still have something on our. Well, let's take 5 minutes to quickly talk about it anyway, because it's a key thing that's happening, not just down in the US, but up here in Canada too, and that's the wildfires. And specifically, you wanted to mention the, was it Dixie wildfire in California?
Dixie wildfires in California. I've been thinking about wildfires a lot lately. I think, honestly, my kids are at their grandparents in Idaho for the summer on their horse farm. And I got a buzz in the middle of the night that says, hey, we're being evacuated due to wildfires, which is there. Everyone is safe. Everyone's fine. Horses are fine. It's not a call you want to get when your kids are 2,000 miles away. And then I started doing some reading about the Dixie wildfires in California. And I wanted to ask you and ask the audience, I feel like there's a lot more wildfires the last 2 or 3 years than there were previously. And I didn't know if it's recency bias or because of the huge wildfires in California's 2 year that the media is reporting on it more. But I feel like this is on my radar and we're discussing it more. You and I talked about the wildfires in Canada in our last episode. So maybe this is all anecdotal, but I wanted to get your thoughts really quick. Are we seeing more wildfires, or is this I'm paying more attention, or it's more in the media?
All of it. There are more wildfires because of climate change. Okay. We're getting stuck in this cycle, because I've actually been paying attention to it quite a bit over the last few weeks anyway. And I was going to suggest us talking about wildfires, but when I saw it a list of topics you brought up and went perfect, because I want to touch on that too. Let's just say we're having a forest fire. It dries out, with the heat, it dries out all the trees and the shrub brush, which makes it more combustible. So when you have a thunderstorm, lightning strikes, it causes, big fires. The carbon that goes up in the air raises the temperature. So what ends up happening is the fire season gets longer. So there becomes more fires as related to that. And we get stuck in this cycle over and over and over again. So sometimes because we're seeing forest fires up in the Yukon, Alaska now, places where you don't normally hear about it because they're not as hot, but now they are, because the forest season is getting longer. The fire season is getting longer because the temperatures are going up. So it's drying things out sooner, and which means forest fires are now starting earlier and lasting longer than they did before. And as a result, especially right now on the west coast of Canada and the US, which is just horrific, some of the temperatures and the scenes you're seeing, and Australia we've seen, and even in Europe we're seeing it, and other places around the world too, not just those ones, but it's happening everywhere. So we are going to see more until that cycle can somehow be broken.
Yeah, so that's something our colleagues need to be factoring in. You may have been in an area where historically that wasn't a risk or a concern or something you needed to think about. You need to be thinking about it now.
Yeah. I we'll probably touch on this again in our next episode, because I know there's more we can probably say about it as well. But right now I'm hearing all kinds of terrible stories and seeing just horrific pictures. I think there was Turkey, I think, has got a big forest fire right now, where we were seeing scenes of trucks loaded with people just coming through these walls of fire trying to evacuate people. And it's just, that's something out of a Hollywood movie, but it's real. And everyone is experiencing it right now. And you're right. If we have a business, we have to start paying attention to it. A forest fire is no longer way over there. It's now in our back doors, our backyards. I grew up in northwestern Ontario, and for a lot of people who may not know where that is, if you know the map of the United States, the state of Minnesota, northwestern Ontario is right above it. You can fit about 10 Minnesotas in Ontario, but northwestern Ontario is just up there, and I grew up there, and there are a lot of forest fires in that area, and all those people that get evacuated, many of them get sent to the city of Thunder Bay, where I grew up when we came to Canada. And so I've known about forest fires my entire life. I've seen what it does, and I've met people that have been evacuated, for years and years. So it's always been there, and it has gotten worse over especially the last 5 years or so. And I think it's going to continue. Any final thoughts on that, words?
No, I think like you said, I think we maybe dig into that a bit more in the next episode. There's a lot to think about with wildfires, and it's certainly impacting a lot of people that it never has before.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the end of our show, so it means the personal stuff. What are you reading right now? What are you doing?
So I have a book that came out today.
Oh, the company. The picture disappeared with the background. Put it in front of you. Can't see it. There we go.
This is a book called Disasterology by a disasterologist, Sam Montana, who I met several years ago. She's in the academic and research aspect of our fields. It's always interesting to talk to people who study disasters as an academic field, and she's a disasterologist, which is an amazing title that I'm jealous of. Her book, Disasterology, came out today. It's in bookstores today, so I haven't read it yet, but I have a copy, and I'm excited to read that.
I'm going to get that one. I'm going to get that book. Anything else from your side?
Let me see if I might have to turn off my How do I turn off my digital? I've got something, but it's not going to come through. How do I turn off the digital background?
Oh, you go to your settings, and on the left side, it'll say backgrounds. And then just on the right side, scroll down to click none. Now, of course, I'm assuming you're using Zoom. So I
Yes,
shouldn't
I
make
am,
that
but I'm
assumption.
using Zoom on a Mac, so it's a little persnickety, and I don't want to exit out here. Full screen. All right. Well, anyways, I'll have to. I'll just say I was gonna hold it up, but I have my just for you my Tampa Bay Lightning
Oh,
my Tampa Bay Lightning back-to-back banner
jeez.
hung proudly for
You had to
you.
rub that in, didn't you?
So that's my last hockey thing for quite a while.
For a little while, anyway. Yeah.
But that's all that I have personally. How about yourself? What I know you got some news.
Yeah, I do. I'll mention that one last. I've mentioned before, I always like to read something with personal growth, entertainment, and something related to the industry. So for entertainment, I'm reading the Witchwood Crown by Tad Williams. It's a big fantasy book, and it's a beast, but really enjoyable. I just finished yesterday 9 Lies About Work by Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall. Marcus Buckingham actually wrote the book that started me on this path to do things. He wrote Now Discover Your Strengths. After I read that book, I became self-employed, started writing books and everything. So obviously this was an enjoyable read. I liked that. And the other day I got asked, actually I was just commenting, but I ended up with with an extract of David Lindsted's new book that he's writing, American Resilience. So I have to read that one over the next little while. And then my final announcement is I haven't put it on any sites yet, but it's now formal. It is now done. Planning and performing the business impact analysis, the costs, the challenges, and the considerations is now formally done. So it will be released on LinkedIn. I'll be putting an announcement on there, and I'll probably make it an ebook on my site before it goes up on Amazon.
Now I have to ask you, you have a quote on the cover of your book.
I do.
Who's that from?
David Lindsted.
And how did you get an anti-BIA person to give you a quote for the cover of your BIA book?
Actually, I approached him and Mark, because Mark Armour, the other half of Adaptive, he has a quote on the back of the book. Mark does. I actually approached them because if you're doing a BIA, that's fine. You know, if you have to do one, you have to do one. I've done enough over the years that I've identified a whole pile of challenges with it. You know, if you are going to do it, well, then this is what you need to consider, because this is what's going to happen. Like it or not, it will happen. It's happened every single time, you know, but nobody ever talks about it. They always talk about the happy, you do a BIA and this is what you get and everyone contributes, right? And it never occurs that way. So I took all those ideas and I thought, you know, as I started to draft it, I thought, I don't want to end up seeming as though I'm writing Adaptive Business Continuity Part 2. So I should reach out to Mark and David and just say, hey, would you kind of, you know, take a look at this? You know, I don't want to be stepping on your toes, you know, and they actually did read it, gave some feedback, and provided me a couple of quotes. So that's how they
fantastic.
That's how they got on there.
When will that be? When are you shooting to release that?
I have to send some files to my friend who's going to create the ebook, and then we're going to put it on my website, stone-road.com, in the shop as an ebook, and hopefully that'll be in the next couple of weeks. And I'll announce it on LinkedIn and, you know, Facebook, et cetera, that it's all there. And then I will announce it. Now it's up on Amazon, because, you know, Amazon is Amazon, and we all know how. Well, I won't even go into it. So I will just sell it on my site for a while first before up on.
Well, hopefully you can bring some copies to Minneapolis, and I'll buy one off you in person if we can actually meet up again someday.
Actually, I think I'll just give you a copy. I've got a stack right over here, so I'll just give you one because I do plan on reaching out for you on the one I'm writing now. So,
Absolutely.
but I got to finish it first. At least the draft. So, but that's about it on my end. Do you have any final thoughts or final comments from your end?
No, I think we went way over time. For your audience, I'd just let them know we shoot for 40 minutes every time. I don't think we've ever broken an hour, but we like talking. We're passionate about the things we talk about, and maybe someday we'll do a short episode and surprise everyone.
And a lot of it, if anyone's still listening after this amount of time, comes from our own personal experiences. We're not
Absolutely.
just quoting from a book or standard guideline or something we heard. It's things we've actually gone through, and experienced, which is a whole new dynamic. We're sharing, ourselves with people. So we have come to the end of our show, and we are way over. I think we'll probably just make this a two-parter, but James, it's always fantastic talking to you, and I know we'll have another interesting show in a couple of weeks again. So thank you very much for joining us, and thanks again for being a part of the 100th episode of Preparing for the Unexpected.
Thank you, Alex. Congratulations on 100 episodes. Glad we could do a mega episode.
Yeah, well, there you go, 100th episode, so we made it a mega episode. That makes sense. So thanks again, James. Until next month, and everybody watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave a message and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about something related to business continuity, disaster management, COVID, personal well-being, anything that's relatable to those subjects, you can reach me through my LinkedIn profile, which is in the video description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.